Welcome back to Galbraith Does Psych. Let's do some revision. Okay, I do have another video on revision advice more generally, but for the purposes of today, we are at the practice and retrieval phase of our revision. So we're going to see some exam style questions taken from some of the work on my website, and I'm going to give you some time to have a go, and then I'll talk through some possible ways of approaching them. So today we're going to look at obedience, we're going to look at Milgram's work, and we're going to look at the situational variables that affect obedience. Okay, so here are some questions. You might like to pause the video, give yourself some time, maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes to have a go at some. Yeah, you could spend that time reviewing just verbally or mentally or with a partner, all of them or most of them, or you could dedicate that time to actually having a go at the essay, for example, at the end. So, pause the video, come back when you're ready. Okay, so you're back with me. Let's do this. Identify is the command word here, so you don't need to explain it, you're just going to state. Yeah, so very quick question. The variables on the spec, there are 3 of them you're supposed to know about, as they are related to obedience. They are proximity, location, those are the 2 key ones to know for Milgram, and then uniform is named on the spec as well. There is a bit of debate over whether Milgram's work really addresses the uniform variable. He did have a condition where he looked at what would happen with a plain clothes Confederate, but you don't specifically have to use that one. There are other studies you can use, but for Milgram, definitely focus on proximity and location. Okay, next one. Again, identify the roles played by the participant and the Confederate. This one isn't really an exam question. This is more focused on you kind of just retrieving some of that key knowledge. Okay, so you're probably not going to be asked it, worded like this, but it would be part of what you'd be expected to give if you were outlining the procedure, for example. So the roles, hopefully you remember, are that the participant played the part of the teacher and the Confederate played the learner. Okay, so this moves us into describing the procedure more generally. You would start off possibly by saying that the participant was allegedly randomly assigned the role of teacher, but of course it was rigged, with a Confederate taking on the role of learner. They were told it was a memory test, and they had to work through a series of word association pairs and deliver an electric shock every time the learner got the question wrong. These shocks started at 15 volts and they went up in 15 volt increments to 450 volts. Prods were given, verbal prods that is, when the participant stalled or delayed or objected. And Milgram recorded the maximum voltage given. Yeah, so there's a little bit more than you need for 2 marks there, but those are some of the things that you could say. Okay, describe the findings for 3 marks. Couple of key figures for you to learn, because this is a key study on the AQA spec. The percentage of participants that went all the way to 450 volts was 65, yeah, 65%. 100% of them went up to 300 volts, and then we started seeing people stop at that point, because that was the point where the victim, as it were, the learner, started objecting. Yeah, so 100% all the way to 300, 65 to 450. What you could then talk about is that Milgram observed signs of distress, sweating, things like that, nervous laughter. You could also talk about the interviews that were conducted as part of the debrief, and most of the participants said they were happy to have taken part. Okay. Explain how. Ooh, apologies for that. Explain how Milgram investigated the role of location and his findings. So this was the one where the baseline study was done at Yale University, remember, in that lab, and he moved the study and replicated it at a rundown office block downtown, yeah, somewhere that he'd rented out. So that's the procedure. It's the same procedure, it's just downtown in a run-down office block. In terms of the findings, well, again, compared to that 65%, yeah? So obedience fell to 47.5 Explain how he investigated the role of proximity. So this is a bigger question, but you hopefully remember that this is because there are two parts to this. So one is proximity to the victim. Yeah. So the way he did this, because it's a how, so it's more about the procedure, he had the victim or the learner in the same room as the teacher, the participant. And he also had another condition where they actually had to force the learner's hand onto the shock plate in order for them to get shocked. So that's how he did it. Again, still recording the maximum shock given. He also looked at proximity to the experimenter. So he had a condition where it's all the same apart from the experimenter wasn't in the room. They delivered the orders and the prods and things via telephone. Yeah, so that's the procedure. On to the bottom row. So we're stepping it up and we're now thinking a little bit more critically. We're thinking about ethics. The second part of this question, look, I know it's a 2+2, but that's because there are two issues. You need to also pay attention to the fact that it says how these might be overcome. So, one ethical issue is, or what could we talk about? Maybe a lack of informed consent, yeah? Participants didn't consent fully because they were told it was a memory study. Now, there are obvious reasons, and the question doesn't ask us to justify it, it's just outline it, and then how it's going to be overcome, yeah? So the second part of the response there is how we're going to overcome it. So during the debrief, Milgram did, or, I suppose this is hypothetical, so Milgram could have explained to the participants at that point and got their kind of retrospective consent, yeah? So afterwards. Another ethical issue, because that's 2 marks, we need 2 more now. Another ethical issue might be protection from harm. Some of Milgram's participants were quite distressed by the procedure. That's your outline. How are we going to overcome that? Milgram could have psychologically screened his participants to filter out anybody that was likely to experience significant harm. Or, again, in the debrief, he could have checked in to make sure they were okay and signpost them to any relevant services for support. There you go. You could also talk about right to withdraw, and then again in the debrief offer them that right afterwards. Okay, explain 2 limitations. Well, one of them could be ethics, so we've basically just been through that. Other things you could talk about, maybe the internal validity. So you could say that perhaps participants saw through the study. You could mention how it was dependent on the acting of the Confederate, and maybe they weren't the most realistic or kind of convincing actors. And you could elaborate by talking about how if they've seen through it, there's a high risk of demand characteristics, and this undermines the internal validity, yeah? Whatever you do, it's a kind of peel structure, yeah? So point, evidence, explain or elaborate, and then a kind of conclusion or link back to the point. So yeah, ethics, internal validity. You could, I suppose, talk about the external validity, and I suppose the temptation there is to say, oh, it's a lab, it's artificial, but you could argue the other way, because the whole point is that they are obeying a kind of scientific figure, an authority figure, a researcher. So in my opinion, and I have got another video about Milgram, you could go back and find that if you like. In my opinion, it's not that much of an issue compared to some other studies. But yeah, 2 kind of peel points there. Okay, finally the essay. I won't rehash all of it, but again, you're going to split this down. You're going to have 6 knowledge, 10 evaluation marks. A few sentences on the procedure, we've been through that already. A few sentences, or a couple of sentences on the findings, again we've been through that. So that's your 6 knowledge marks. And then just launch into your 10 evaluation. So I would probably be looking at maybe 3 to 4 evaluation paragraphs. Ideally, to get into the top bands, I'm going to include some kind of counter argument, kind of discuss it a bit more. So they're not just kind of 3 short peel paragraphs. I'm going to develop that a bit more, maybe have a discussion about justifying some of the ethics or justifying some of the internal validity. Just look at the participants who were distressed. If they didn't believe in it, they wouldn't be distressed. Yeah, so there's evidence for and against some of these points. Okay, remember, don't kind of waste your time doing conclusions where you're just going to repeat everything at the end. Don't worry, just knowledge, evaluation. Yeah. Okay. Right, so you've had a go at that. I've been through my thoughts on how to tackle those. It's important now that you analyse your performance in terms of what were the bits that you could and couldn't do, but also reflect and think about, okay, well, I could do that bit, but I had to look this up, or that was really, really hard for me, or oh, that was easy, so maybe I don't need to spend so much time worrying about that bit. Fine, yeah, but it's important that you take that minute to reflect, and then action plan. What are you going to do about it? This could feed into the next step of your revision, yeah? Become that audit phase. All right. Thanks very much if you're still with me. I hope that you found that useful. A massive thanks to everyone that has subscribed so far. I hope that you're finding things useful. Do let me know how you're doing in the comments. Please do feel free to ask for certain content, certain topics, whatever it is that you might want. Okay. Good luck, everybody. Keep going. Bish bash bosh.